Are you familiar with the concept of easy and hard problems and then simple and complex problems and how they interact?
I think to some degree, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So just to frame it up, I think I would have needed to frame it up anyway, but something can be easy, which is how difficult is the execution, or hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be simple. You understand all the inputs and giving the correct inputs gets the right outputs, or complex, where the actual interaction between your inputs and outputs is inconsistent or unknown, right? So when you have something that is easy but complex, you're getting all sorts of random results. If you have something that is simple but hard, that's often where the money is, by the way. If it's really hard to execute something, but once you execute it, you always get results, that's where you make a lot of money. That's where a lot
Can you give an example of that?
Yes. So just in general, if you think in terms of manufacturing, taking a whole bunch of raw materials and then turning those raw materials into something new that is more valuable than the raw materials themselves and the labor that you put into it. And so
of course
you have to take all the factors in. That's hard. But
once it's solved,
once you solve that, you know
it's repeatable.
Yep.
Yes.
It's repeatable. Once you put all the inputs in, boom, it's a hard problem. So
like literally any business.
Example.
Once
yeah.
I get the materials sourced, I have a market for what I'm making.
Yeah.
It's just clockwork at that point. Even though there's a lot of moving pieces
in repeatable processes. Right. And that's where, so for instance, building a car, right? Mm-hmm. You know that you can take all of these raw materials, bring them to your factory. Your factory's been optimized to reduce the amount of labor, electricity, blah, 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 so that you can generate this thing a lot less expensively than a prototype made one-off in a single shop, right? And if you talk to these car guys that do their own cars, like, oh, I did this for only this amount of money, it's their time that they're not factoring in.
Right.
It's their time, it's the electricity they use, it's the specialized tools that they already own.
And if you have a lot of time and not a lot of money,
correct,
then that's the trade-off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But in terms of something business-wise, like I am taking $10,000 worth of steel and copper and rubber and all of that, and I'm turning that $10,000 worth into something that I'm wholesaling for $15,000. That is a hard problem, but it's simple.
From cars don't exist to cars are now a thing from these raw materials. That's the real innovation too. Because like there's car companies today making cars and they design them, but the person who invented the car from this pile of raw materials, that is a complex. Because everyone else who's doing these things, it's just variations on what Henry Ford did.
Correct.
Not that he invented the car necessarily, but I just mean like the assembly line structure that he maximized. Mm-hmm. That is the efficiency. That is the repeatable.
Right. Exactly. So when I think about certain topics, right, I can categorize these things into, easy problem, hard problem, simple problem, complex problem, and then try to figure out, okay, so what is the issue with this? Is it that when I do something, I have no idea what result it's going to generate? Is that a lack of knowledge and understanding on my part? Or is it because the inputs generate somewhat chaotic outputs, right? And people who take those complex problems and map them more efficiently, and then eventually make them more simple by mapping the outputs better, that's an incredible skill set, right? But
is there anything that people can do to develop that skill set? Or do you think that's something that is kind of inherent, that they just have this like creativity or this bend in their mind towards efficiency? Obviously, there's many cultures that are known to be ruthlessly efficient cultures and promote that in their cultural values.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something like that, or do you think it's something that is learned, or somewhere in between?
Let me give you another example. Here's another example of a complex problem. Creating art, like a movie. Okay, making a movie. This is one example that I think will resonate for you for a variety of reasons. Making a movie is incredibly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. Different pieces of that over the last 100 years, but over the last 30, 40 years in particular, right? We've grabbed onto those pieces and turned them into a process that makes it more predictable, right? Mm-hmm. So how much funding does a movie take? And where should that funding go? Who gets paid what gets us the best results at the box office, blah, blah, blah. That's more systematized than it ever used to be. But the initial, I'm making a movie and I need to make money off of it. You don't know how many people are going to show up and watch it. You don't know whether something's going to become a cult classic. You don't know, there's a lot of factors that you don't know, and you can make an amazing, technically, movie that doesn't resonate. And because it doesn't resonate with people, it falls apart at the box office. Mm-hmm. You can make a complete garbage dumpster fire, technically, of a movie that has a through line that people resonate with, and it becomes a cult classic. And you 5x your investment, 10x your investment, right? And that's an example of something that is hard and complex.
Right.
And so people taking chunks of that and saying, hey, once we overlay the creative direction piece, then we systematize each of these components as much as we can. And then we find the components that generate unknown outputs and we're not quite sure. And then we systematize those as much as we can, break those into components. And that's a lot of what cybersecurity does too, right? With my background. A lot of what we do is, how do we secure this thing? We break it into components. Well, how do we secure that thing? We break it into components. How do we secure that thing? We break it into components. And it's not infinite regression. You hit a point where something is sufficiently well understood that you can go, okay, this piece is now simple. And then you can start moving up. But you will run into understanding which of the components are complex components versus simple components. That is very helpful.
Well, and the interesting thing for your analogy with film is that there is a component that is part of that I think is impossible to solve still. And that is the human connection to some degree. Because we have all seen things that everyone who sees this thinks it's great. Mm-hmm. But there was a disconnect with how it was advertised or distributed, that not a lot of people got to see it, and it never took off or never got that word of mouth.
Yeah.
And likewise, we've seen things that got very little fanfare that did take off for whatever reason. And it's not that it's necessarily better. There's just kind of, we're getting into the whole psychological aspects behind meme culture, virality. Mm-hmm. What is it that makes people spread this and not this, and vice versa? Because when you were saying that earlier, there was a part of me that's like, to me, I don't see it as possible to make a film that is technically great and doesn't connect with its audience at all. Specifically its audience, not nobody, mm-hmm. not everybody, but like if you make art that is trying to speak to people, art is a means of communication. If no one is hearing it, then it's not, then it didn't work. Something was failed in the execution of it. So there is that, but even something like The Room is a classic example of where the technical process was not good, but it still managed to connect to people in a way that was unexpected. Yeah, it found its audience. So as art, it is successful in that it is speaking to people. Yep. You can say, is what it's speaking worthwhile? Does it make humanity? Does it uplift humanity's spirits or bring us down in some way? There's obviously discussion to be had around that. Is there anything aesthetically pleasing or beautiful about these films? To some degree, that's what I love about film and motion picture in general. I guess television would fall in this category as well. Is there is so many layers to the art. K-pop Demon Hunters is a good example. The story is not overly complex. The themes are not overly complex. But the music is really good and catchy, and it speaks to people on a level that I think is a huge part of why it's been so successful, is down to the music. And that's just one part of it. There's so many moving parts there are many movies that were commercially failures and maybe didn't connect. Maybe the story wasn't great or the acting wasn't great, but the music really connects with people. And there's people who still listen to soundtracks or even just tracks off of soundtracks years later for movies that are largely were not successful. Yeah. Similarly, you can have movies that the acting was poor or the writing was poor, but it's beautifully shot. Just what I can put this on and don't have any sound, and it's just seeing the images was so good. There's so many elements of art coming together. Yep. Costume design, acting, writing, even direction. Like directors use so many pieces in how they frame shots and how they force perspective on the audience to convey their message. And the director is operating independently of the writer oftentimes and can be conveying two different ideas. Right. I just watched a video that was talking about, David Villeneuve. I forgot how to pronounce his name. He directed Harry Potter 3 and then a number of others. He's won Oscars now. But they were talking about how the direction in that Harry Potter movie versus some of the other Harry Potter movies are much more straightforward. And he used a scene where he frames it in such a way that like Harry and this person he's talking to are off screen or like off center. And you can see his friends kind of on the side. And the person who is delivering this news about some danger that Harry is in is presented as between Harry and his friends. He has separated him from his friends. And it's a visual representation of like the world that Harry is in compared to how his friends are because of the nature of his condition and his importance in that world. There's an inherent separation between him and like to some degree they can just be kids and he's dealing with life and death stuff over here. Right. Throughout the scene they move and reposition and there's all these different things that happen with the framing that like is conveying these messages. And that's such a impactful thing to me as a visual artist and to see these things that people, you need to know this to be able to do it, to be able to create that, but the audience understands it implicitly. Correct. And that's one of the things I also love about film is that there's a language that human beings respond to in the way that film is presented and shot. Even though it's a relatively new technology, there's something inherent in us that we respond to these things on a subconscious level. Like most people watching that movie don't pick that up. They don't think, oh, this is what this is that's happening. It's the same watching a football game. Right. This is a good example because most people who have never played the sport or certainly never at a higher level, it just looks like a bunch of people running around a lot of times. Yeah. Where people who have studied at an advanced level, they see what's happening at a higher level. They see the intentionality. Yep. And that's what happens when you're studying film. You see the intentionality a lot of times. And you see the lack of intentionality. There's a lot of times where people maybe don't have the creative vision or the talent, can still imitate things they've seen other people do, and they don't understand why they did it. They just thought it looked cool.
Right.
This was a huge problem when I was first moved to LA. There was a lot of people trying to write like Quentin Tarantino. They see these Tarantino movies, they're like, oh, this is amazing. This dialogue is so interesting and engaging. I'm going to write about pop culture and weird references. And it doesn't work.
Right.
Why isn't it working? And it's because part of it is that's Quentin's voice, not your voice. You don't imitate other people's voices and have success. You need to be able to say something. You need to be saying something yourself.
Right.
And if it's not your voice, you don't know what you're saying anymore.
Right. But often it has to start with imitation. And
of course, that's absolutely where it starts.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's interesting about it.
Yeah.
I was just talking to my wife about this because she's studying different dyslexia programs and looking at how this program does this thing and this program approaches the same problem with a different approach. And I was pointing out to her, I'm like, Picasso knew how to draw a bowl of fruit. Picasso knew how to draw a person that looked like a normal person.
Right.
He understood the rules and learned the rules so that he knew how to break them. And that's how you create your own voice as an artist.
Yep.
First, you need to learn all the rules of how these things work and how people say these things. And then you start experimenting. Where can I push this? Where can I push this? If I do this, is this convey what I'm trying to say? But you have to have something you need to say. That's the other part of it. Not only you have to be able to say it, you need to know how to say it and develop your voice. But it doesn't matter if you have your own voice if you have nothing to say.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have problems right now. And that's a whole nother topic in the film industry and why movies are not doing well, why TV is often not doing well. Is there's a lot of people who know the technical things. They know how to imitate what people have done, but they don't have anything valuable to say. They don't have anything useful to bring to humanity.
Yeah.
On a deeper level than just what the current political thing is, maybe, which is very shallow when it comes to the human spirit doesn't respond to dynamic politic situation number 18. It's like, this is where Star Wars resonates. This is where the Greek poets resonate thousands of years later.
Right.
Is that they speak to something on a deeper level in the human spirit.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything, if you don't know your own spirit, if you're not connected to your own self, you have a very hard time having anything useful to say that will resonate with anyone else beyond yourself or maybe just like your friends and your political party.
Yeah. Well, and recency bias is such a thing too. And we think we're smarter than people that have been before us. So that's kind of
chronological snobbery is the term that C.S. Lewis used, the idea that we are better than they are because we came after somehow.
Right, exactly.
We know where they went wrong.
Yeah. And so when you have a story that has survived decades or hundreds of years or thousands of years,
which is
right,
wild to think about.
Why, what makes you think you can live up to that when you're imitating, right? And that's kind of, there are people like, I could do better than Tolkien. Well, maybe, go for it.
Well, and that's what we see.
Right.
That's part of the reason, like Rings of Power, they don't say, how can I best convey this story?
Right.
They say, how can I improve on this story? How can I make this my own?
Right.
And the idea that you have more to say and something more relevant to say than a man who fought in World War I and lived through these crazy things. Like the stuff that he walked through as a person, he witnessed horrific evil and horrific death and had a lot to say about good and evil as a result. But if you haven't lived through those things, what do you have to say about?
Well, and he also had tremendous historical and theological depth.
Oh, of course.
That and
well, and that's a whole
linguistics and the structure, the structure of storytelling and the human condition. And he was
able to bring his personal experience and tie that together with the theological and philosophical parts. Correct. He didn't just sit in a room and wax poetic about philosophy and religion and art and things. He had lived. He had been through hardship. He had lost his wife. He had been through a lot of hardship. C.S. Lewis also went through a lot of loss, a lot of challenges, rough childhood. And they tied that real life experience to transcendent philosophy and religious ideas, theological ideas, and wove that into something that speaks to people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
If you just sit in a classroom and study philosophy and try and write about philosophy, you will come out hollow. It will come off as dispassionate and empty to people who have actually lived through those things, who have actually seen where the rubber meets the road in their lifetime for whatever reason, whatever they've been through. Those things will not resonate to them because you're not speaking from experience.
Yeah.
And likewise, if all you experience is the raw experience without coming to terms theologically or religiously or philosophically with what that means for you personally and for humanity at large, what is the things that you witnessed and have experienced? What does that tell you about human experience, the human experience? Mm-hmm. How can I contextualize this? What does it mean? How can I add meaning to what I've experienced? Without that, it's going to also feel shallow. Mm-hmm. It's going to feel like you haven't processed what you've been through and put it into a meaningful ethos for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.